Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Surfing the Portal. This is incredible information we're hatching here. This is probably the most dangerous program on the internet. If you're receiving this or you see this on YouTube, you probably should download it. Because of something that was said on this program last week, I got restricted from Pinecone Utopia's Google Hangouts. And that's pretty amazing. So I don't know what we're saying, but it seems to be resonating with somebody, not in a good way for them. Anyway, my name's Paul Marco, and the purpose of this program is to give people a chance to talk to us through the chat room, which I haven't really got in touch with yet, but I'll try to in a minute. Get in touch with questions about things that might have been put on the Pinecone Utopia portal. Now, if you remember from weeks past, the reason that we do the Pinecone Utopia portal is to, number one, do some research. What kind of consciousness raising, mindfulness, prayer, those type of techniques have you used if you're a selected or targeted individual that has helped you relieve some of your suffering? And we're collecting them so that we can, and it's an open source, so anybody can see this. We're collecting them so that it can be shared amongst the whole community, and we can get more feedback on how this is working. Then eventually, I think what will happen with the research is that we'll be able to find patterns this type of technique seems to raise vibration and is especially effective against this type of thing. I don't know what we're going to find, but if we can find a hypothesis, then we can do some tests. We can find out maybe how to break the code. I don't know. Also on that website are techniques that I know about and other people know about it, that we've collected and put on there for you to try. If you're a TI or special individual, and you don't even have to be selected. You can just do this as a way of protecting yourself against future encroachments. These are good techniques to learn how to control yourself, control your vibration, and control what I think is your connection to the universe. Anyway, so this is going to be somewhat of a very special show because we have guests. We have at least one guest, maybe another one. Both have written things either to put on the Pinecone Utopia portal or soon to be put on, as soon as my technical help comes back. She'll be able to put the new things that have been. We've been reading them. I just haven't put them on the portal yet. So they'll come up. Today we're going to talk to Romola D, and most of you know who Romola D is. She's the most dangerous journalist and art teacher in the United States because closely surveilled and monitored, and probably one of the most lovely people I've ever encountered. She's going to talk with us about a technique that she employs that seems to help her. And when she first told me about this technique and about the results she was getting, it really just blew me away because it was affecting the behavior of many, many people, just her internal process. So why don't we start off by talking a little bit to Romola about being on the program and working with us to find these techniques. Hi, Romola.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me. And thanks for that stunning intro.
Dangerous.
Yeah, it's too funny. I mean, it's absurd. All of us who are being surveilled and monitored in this way, we're the last thing from being dangerous, and yet we're being projected and portrayed as such. It's an absolute joke.
Yeah, just the most healthy, growing, vibrating, intelligent human beings. Wow, that's a real threat to the hive mind. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, so anybody who can think on their own 2 feet and speak up for themselves is considered dangerous today.
Yeah. Well, so it was interesting after we decided to gather these type of techniques, because before this, we were mostly looking at gathering evidence to present authorities.
Right.
But we decided on one or two of the podcasts to also incorporate this direction, which helps you not so much fight back, but to climb out of the maze, climb out of the box, climb out of the matrix. Something like
Yes,
that.
and I love that idea because in a sense it's kind of, tunneling through, because the matrix in which we're all being bound in this horrific surveillance state that we're all being surrounded by seeks to kind of box us in very concrete ways, but what you are talking about and the kind of methodologies that, some of us have started to explore already are means to kind of tunnel through or break out, as you say, climb out of the maze, even as it seeks to box us in. So we kind of escape from it anyway. So it's a kind of a powerful concept, I think, to understand that we do have, it's the Buddhist monk, the Tibetan monk, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh. That's the.
Yeah.
If Naomi comes on, she's going to talk about him.
Oh, great, great. I'm just remembering a book that he's written called "Be Free Where You Are." And it's the text of a talk that he gave at a correctional institution, at a prison in the US, and I forget where exactly. But he walked in and he actually, gave this long talk to those people who were incarcerated. And he talked to them about conquering anger. And he talked to them about his own anger, about that, he had experienced seeing whole villages razed during the Vietnam War, and how he conquered that anger, and the ways in which he recommended that people begin to use to stabilize their breathing, to calm down, to bring their entire emotional energy from sort of way up right down to their solar plexus and their navel, lie down, possibly bring everything down to the firm center of gravity of the navel. Breathe deeply and let the energy go. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's really great. I think it's interesting that Thich Nhat Hanh got his inspiration by trying to overcome the situation he was facing in Vietnam. Isn't it funny that the Phoenix program was driving these people? In other words, the same Phoenix program that they're applying to us today was the one that got Thich Nhat Hanh started. You know what I mean?
True. That's true. Exactly. How extraordinary, isn't it? So it's sort of coming full circle now, because the Phoenix program has come home to roost in the USA today.
Absolutely. And we need all the help we can get to deal with this madness.
Yeah, yeah. So, the thing that really struck me about that little book, and I actually, it's a very small book, and I sent it around as a Christmas present or as going away partying teacher's present as well. I hand it around to people because it's the kind of thing you can carry in your purse. You read it at stoplights. It's very inspiring. And one of the things it basically says, the basic message of the book, is that despite whatever ghastly circumstance you find yourself in, such as being in prison, where you literally have no control over some of your external physical circumstances, you can still be free where you are. And the way you do that is by going inward. You do your meditation and your breathing, and you go inward, and you become free. You enter a space of peacefulness and serenity.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You always think of accessing the universe going externally.
Correct, yes.
Really, the depth of the universe is internally. It's a much deeper feeling when you go in that way and you're away from the external matrix.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is what the great yogis have all said, and this is what Buddhists teaches, and I guess various religions. I mean, even the Gnostic Gospels, right, talk about this going inward.
Yeah, well, I think when I was learning about the Enneagram initially, one of the examples that they give about the Enneagram in use, Enneagram is a personality typing. It's very ancient, very ancient.
Yes,
You can trace it back 3,000, 4,000 years.
it
And
sounds familiar, but I'd love to hear more about it.
yeah, it was kept alive by the Sufis and then brought to the West, actually by, was it Essilor Institute, which I know is a part of Tavistock. But anyway,
oh right,
it came through that lineage, and I cannot remember all of the teachers. My teacher for that would be Helen Palmer. But anyway, it's a typing. I think it's pretty accurate. I used it in executive coaching for 10 years. I mean, it's a fine, very interesting program. But anyway, they would talk about how the Franciscans, which is a sect of Christianity, I'm not sure whether it's Catholic. I think it is Catholic. They would visit the different monks who were meditating in the caves. And the problem, the thing that separated the monk from going internally enough to reach connection with their God, was their Enneagram type. In other words, the type 3 is a performer, and they want to be really good at everything. And the type 3 would always go in, and he would beat himself on, not being able to do it right, or or there's the number 1 type, who's the perfectionist, and his perfectionist would separate him from the ability to reach oneness. So that's how the Franciscans use it with their meditating monks. So I would assume from that story, if the story's correct, that Christianity has at least some connection with that particular, I think they would consider it an Eastern art, although meditation is.
Right. And I guess in the Christian tradition also, there's different forms of meditation.
Yeah, there's guided meditation. And then there's, of course, the Vipassana, which is the one I know about. Okay, other types of meditation.
Yeah, so
you can focus, you can not focus. Go ahead, Ramol, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, actually, if you look at the different Eastern traditions, there are many, many ways in which, one can meditate. There are many, many forms of instructions, ways of getting to that state of absolute stillness, I think. I mean, I'm familiar with a few of them. I've learned a little bit of meditation, both from the yogi tradition, that's from Paramhamsa Yogananda, and also from the Buddhist tradition, actually the Thai, because there is a Buddhist meditation, and I have been to it and been introduced to the Dhammakaya method of meditation.
Oh.
So there's slightly different methodologies. I mean, I can talk about a couple of them if you want.
Yeah, it might be interesting. That might be interesting. Go ahead, why don't you tell us?
Okay, so one of the things actually connected to that whole concept of conscious breathing. Oh, by the way, I'm hearing a lot of interference. There's a lot of echo.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll plug in headsets.
That might help, I think.
Might help. That's the only thing I know to do.
Okay. I'm using headsets, and it usually seems to help.
Does that help? Great.
Oh, yes, it's fabulous. Yes. Yeah, you've cut out some of that ambient sound or whatever it was. So I was going to talk about conscious breathing, right, which is the technique that I was talking about on forum the other day, as a means of breaking out of the matrix and breaking that lock-on or that tracking hold that these guys are able to engage in with their remote radiation weaponry. So conscious breathing is nothing but actually being very materially conscious of your in-breath and your out-breath, which is not something that one does on a regular basis, right? I mean, we kind of breathe in an involuntary kind of way. It's not something we think about. We just sort of, scoop in air and we exhale it constantly. But if you consciously breathe, what it actually does is it kind of slows down your entire system, because you end up doing a bit of deep breathing, and you're kind of doing a conscious inhale and a conscious exhale. And if you look at the yogi tradition, there are several ways in which you can use breath to connect with sound, to connect with repetition and mantra and all of the benefits of that, because what it does is it kind of stills the mind, or at least I think that's the idea, to still the mind. All right, does this sound familiar, Paul?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I was just looking at it from the perp standpoint, how frustrating it must be for them to be sitting there, and they're supposed to be predicting your behavior at this point, and now they can't even chart it because you're just climbing out of the box.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, because I think what happens when you still the mind, even if it's for just a few minutes or even a few seconds within a minute, you're kind of breaking out of that bind of being trackable or mappable, right? Because they're engaging in neural network mapping, and you're kind of escaping that. So I think the yogi tradition that I know, there are two famous kinds of, there are two mantras. One is So Hum and the other is Hong Sa. It's just the reverse of the sound. It's actually So Hung or Hung Sa is just like, it's kind of saying not my will but thine, kind of. It's like self versus source, or self versus God. So you just take in a breath and you go so, and you go and you exhale, you go hum, and you do that on and on and on and on, and you do not actually. You stop thinking, in a sense. You're focusing on the repetition of the mantra and the breath. You're really coordinating your breath with the saying, the silent saying of the mantra in your head. And that kind of, puts you in that space where you start to move away from, I guess, the sort of dimensional plane that we're in, and you kind of enter an inner plane of tranquility. And you're probably going to experience physiologically a sense of calming down and slowing down as you proceed, because basically all you're doing is you're focusing on your breath. You're focusing on that inhale and exhale. Now, I've also found that you can do that without using sort of these ancient Sanskrit mantra sounds. You can do it simply saying, I breathe in light, I breathe out light, something like that. Or I was in the garden this morning, and I can tell you, usually when I go outside, just because being dangerous and everything, they get the planes out, they get the helicopters out, they get the neighbors with the power saws out. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but basically it sounds like they're making one heck of a racket and sort of disturbing the sense of tranquility in the atmosphere, because imagine Sunday morning, mid-morning, birds are singing, sun is out, lovely day. And here you have these lunatic neighbors sort of amping it up, ramping it up, and sending the kids out to play. And by the way, not just play at any kind of normal decibel volume, but screaming their heads off as they're playing. This is going on, and it seemed to me this morning that it was so negative. So I was watering the plants in my garden, and I determined I wasn't going to put everything down and run away inside. I was going to continue watering the plants, and I decided to do the conscious breathing. And I just sort of looked at whatever I was watering, and I went, I breathe in Rose of Sharon, I breathe out hydrangea, I breathe in there, I breathe out grass. Because that's what I was doing. It was because I love what I'm surrounded by in the garden. The garden's beautiful, and how could you not connect with nature? So I just did that, and they did not stop. They amped it up. It's like they got 2 or 3 more people from around the block to pull out their power saws and go, at high volume. I ignored them, and I kept doing this. And you see, I've noticed another thing. In my case, because I'm targeted and tracked nonstop on a continuous basis, it's mostly when they can't quite log on to me or track me, that's when they pull out the noise harassment. So it seemed to me it was working actually. So they were going on with their little agenda of noise harassment, and I was enjoying the birds and the bees and the butterflies and the sunshine and the wild grasses and all the late blooming flowers in my garden. So,
Well, at the same
that
time
works.
frustrating, but at the same time frustrating your perps to death over there.
Probably. So, but I determined I don't care what they're doing. I'm standing out here, I'm breathing in the wonderful air, I'm connected to nature, and I'm gonna keep going. So, so that was
Yeah.
great. So that was great. I remember the
Let me
last time.
let me interject something here, Ramola.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Just from a a more scientific standpoint, if I can explain this, your breath. The reason that so much Eastern. Here comes yourself. I can see you. You clicked yourself back on the screen there.
Oh, actually, my whole computer went off and I turned the slide bar on. There we go.
Wow.
Didn't mean to do that.
No, it's okay. Well, anyway, your breath is part of your sympathetic nervous system and also your asympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
Now, I get these mixed up. One is automatic. It's like your digestive system. It's just, I think they call that sympathetic.
Okay.
But asympathetic means you can control it. So your breath works automatically, but you can control it. So when you focus on your breath, there's a connection between your mind and your breath. When you're breathing deeply and slowly, your mind relaxes. When your mind is excited, it stimulates the sympathetic part of your respiratory system, and you start breathing in your upper chest rapidly. So when you focus on your breath and take it over, and you make it slow and carefully, and breathing in the beautiful air and breathing out, what you're doing is you're changing your brain. Your brain is responding to your breath and relaxing it. So you can control your brain by controlling your breath. It's not easy. So that's kind of scientifically how that works.
I believe it, yes, because you definitely have a different feeling. A few minutes well, I don't even know if it's minutes, it might be, seconds, a few seconds of conscious, mindful breathing really calms your entire body down. And, that must happen also from the level of the brain, right?
Right. I think that the idea that it has to take a long time or you have to meditate for hours.
No, you don't really.
I don't think you do. I think it's more quality than quantity.
Yes, and in fact, that's a good point that you raise, actually, because I think a lot of people are put off by the idea of meditation because they think they have to sit and sit and sit and, try to get into the state of mind or whatever. But actually, the greatest benefits can accrue in these little spurts, even if you take a couple minutes out of your morning and just devote to mindful, conscious breathing and being in a quiet place. You can enter that space of absolute serenity, and you can feel that. And I think everybody who meditates has that experience of feeling as if they're breathing in very cool water, right? Like sort of you're in a very cool space. Your entire body cools down, and even the air that you breathe in suddenly seems to be very cool as it enters your body. And that seems to be the space in which you're entering that realm of, almost other dimensional tranquility or serenity.
Exactly. Now, when you're doing this, there's going to be a struggle because your mind wants to chatter away. It wants to talk about this. It wants to talk about how more comfortable you would be on this couch if there was one more pillow on my back. It wants to, and in my mind, I don't know whether everybody else's mind, but I get musical head runners. there's music. There's music playing in the background, and it's usually um, not one of my favorite pieces of music. Just kind of an annoying little
Huh.
music going in the background. But I've noticed that in order for me to really move into that state, I've got to consciously stop thinking, stop the chatter,
Mm-hmm.
and turn off the radio in there, my radio.
Ah,
So, so you're going to be concentrating on the breathing, and
yeah,
then when your thoughts come in, you're just going to kind of push them aside.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
exactly. And the other thing to remember is what you're pointing to exactly is does indeed happen once thoughts do keep rising up. But I think it's much easier if we don't take a perfectionistic sort of attitude toward it, but kind of let it be, So what if, you've had a few thoughts interrupting your flow, interrupting your meditation, interrupting your mindful breathing. You can slip right back into it. There are no rules, obviously. You can slip right back into it.
that's a good point. I think you're right. I always do. I always fight it. I always try to get the little guy to stop talking about Paul Marco's problems
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, right,
just let
right. But
go.
but I think if it happens or not, if you're able to achieve that, I understand one fights with one's mind and one's thoughts
Yeah.
to try to stop it, but whether you achieve that stopping or not, I think it's okay to let that moment be, and in the next moment you come back and you keep trying again with the breath. You
Oh,
hold
yeah.
on. Yeah,
That's great.
so that helps a lot. Um, the last time that I was talking, I think, with Mindy and you about this conscious breathing, there was something else that I was doing that I thought was kind of cool. Now, I would like to read more about it because I know other people are kind of researching in this field, right? About Lynn Taggart, for instance. Oh, sorry, her name is Lynn McTaggart.
Yeah.
She's a science journalist. She's written a couple books, The Field, which is, I have it right in front of me, The Quest for the Secret Force of the Universe, where she interviewed a whole bunch of different scientists from different fields who were making incredibly interesting discoveries, new discoveries, in their fields, in their various fields. Um, Discoveries that had to do with intention affecting reality, discoveries to do with, seeds giving out light, things like that. And things like how our thoughts can affect the space in which we live. So there is a field that connecting all of us, and our thoughts can affect that field. Her other book is called The Intention Experiment, which is about how when you hold intention, uh, you can ripple that intention out into the world if you are rippling outward from a coherent space. And that coherent space has to do with, the same kind of space that one enters in meditation, where you're very calm, very tranquil, and you're not in any state of negative emotionality. You're kind of in a very level, serene space. So I think some people call that coherence. And from that space, if you put your intention out into the world, um, you will be much more powerful in terms of accomplishing that intention or making an effect in the world around you. If it's coming from that serene space, as opposed to coming from a space of intensity or anger or whatever. So there
Wow.
are, yeah, you must have heard of that too, right?
Well, I have a degree in consciousness studies, and
Oh,
people don't even know that that's a field, that there's actual scientific research being done, that that people know a lot about it from a lot of different
right.
teachings down through the years. Yeah.
Hmm. So, Paul, I should be interviewing you actually. You should be telling us more if you have a degree in consciousness studies, because that's exactly my point. That there are people doing research in these fields, which is fabulous. And I think perhaps what we need to do is get more, attuned to the kind of discoveries that they're making, because that information, it's not talked about. It's not in our school textbooks. It's not in our college textbooks. It's not something we learn unless like you, if we go off and get a sort of a specific degree. So I think the information that you have might be vastly interesting and very useful to everybody.
Well, myself and two colleagues wrote a book that's, well, it's kind of a landmark book. There's a book that focuses on research done in the consciousness studies, actually devoted to, or mostly focused on, a way of measuring consciousness expansion called Lovinger's model. And we wrote a book called Post-Conventional Personality. It's published through University of New York publishers, and it's expensive even in the paperback. I think it's still in print. We published it in 2011, but it surveys the work that was being done in consciousness studies up into that period. So you can see that, there are ways to look at consciousness, and there are ways to measure the expansion of consciousness. And there are people, it's pretty interesting work. I thought it was fascinating.
Yes, I'll have to get a copy of this book and look at it. And Paul, just listening to you, it sounds like I should have you on a podcast soon and just, have a little chat on the subject.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about myself, and actually one of my closest friends have been going around, and we've been talking about ways to climb out of the matrix.
Okay.
And one of the ways, of course, is consciousness breathing. And by the way, consciousness breathing is just kind of like a gateway, because I think there's so many things you can build on to that consciousness and consciousness. There's so much benefit you can get out of it, and as you benefit, there are more things you can do with it. It's an amazing thing, and it's easy, and it's really cheap. It doesn't cost anything.
Not at all.
No, so we were talking about intention, and how intention can actually change the outcomes. And he's a firm believer in just what you said, that if you, certainly getting to that space, getting to the relaxed space is almost an end goal in itself, because it's I was in a yoga meditation center, near you. It was the one, God, it was a Franciscan monastery changed into the Berkshires. You've probably heard of it.
Oh, Kripalu?
Yes, Kripalu. Yeah, that's what it was.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have heard of it, and many people go there, and it's quite famous around here. It's a little bit on the expensive side, though, so I haven't quite gone there.
Yeah, it was. And in one of their yoga rooms, I saw written on a flip chart, nothing's ever accomplished, or no growth is ever attained unless it's in a state of total relaxation.
Oh, that's true. That is very true. That's absolutely true about meditation. You can't enter those spaces unless you completely let go your body in terms of relaxing, Yeah.
And it's best if you leave. I have this concept I call belief wardrobe. Like you put it on, and can you change it? Maybe you can, but it's a wardrobe you wear. But you don't take that. Yeah, don't take that into your meditation. Leave all that stuff outside.
Oh, I see. You see it as part of your wardrobe, and you leave it at the door, and then as you enter in a much more vulnerable, open way.
Yeah, I was not thinking vulnerable and open. I was thinking of empty.
Ah, okay, empty.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
because
great.
I'm not sure what's left when you take off your wardrobe. Anyway, so this person and I, we talk about that, and he's a firm believer in the fact that you can, it's like psycho-cybernetics. You can focus and bring things to you.
Yes, yes.
But I think it's,
That's part of that, the law of attraction and stuff like that, it's
yeah.
that kind of thinking.
But
But on the one hand, there's a lot of information out there that seems almost new agey. It's like if you do this, this will happen kind of thing, very formulaic.
yeah,
But on the other hand, there's a lot to be said for the benefits that accrue from meditation and from just being silent and entering your own inner space and so forth.
right.
And existing also, I think when you talk about things like attracting things to you, that goes into sort of the law of abundance. If you see your life as already being abundant, and if you live in a state of gratefulness or gratitude for what you have, you're going to be in a kind of a filled up space mentally, and the kind of vibrations you put out are not going to be agitated vibrations or stressed vibrations or negative vibrations. They're probably going to be calmer and more relaxed because you are already in a happy space. You are already grateful for what you have. And that kind of vibration is a more attracting kind of vibration, from what I've read. So that idea also comes from Hinduism as well, from yogi science, from some of what these yogis say. To say a prayer of gratitude in order to get things, instead of asking for things when you're praying, for instance, you just say a prayer of gratitude for what you do have.
Well, I have to believe that that works. I mean, especially if you're in a place of gratitude, you're already thankful for it. It's just,
Yes, absolutely. And there's a connection with all of this with intention, as you were saying, and that coherent space. So to me, I really would like to read more about it.
well, I have a theory that goes along with this, but it's a little bit more maybe complicated.
Okay.
About 2009, I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was reviewing an instrument that was designed for selecting entrepreneurs. At that time, businesses were interested in getting entrepreneurs that they could give seed money, turn them loose, and have them make them a fortune. And so they were looking for these individuals. And I looked at the personality profile of one, and I can tell you that there's no doubt that this person would be successful, but there's no doubt that I wouldn't want this person living in my neighborhood, because it was a portrait of someone who was pretty obsessive, pretty particular. It was a border, So anyway, the test, I went in and I took a sample of the test. And the way this test works is you answer the first question, and then based on your answer, the subsequent questions change. In other words,
okay.
branches at each decision. So you can actually get a really refined picture of what this person is all about from this instrument, because it was pretty amazing.
Yes, that is amazing.
So myself being a lifetime trainer and viewing the unfolding of consciousness here on the planet as possibly being a developmental program. I would think that if I were divine and I were to design this, I would design it like that test, where your free will deals with your response. In other words, the program gives you a stimulus and you respond. Well, based on your response, it's going to give the program an inkling of where you are and where you can go. In other words, they're not going to give you stupid questions that obviously a person who responded like you did to the first one would not even have to consider. So it could get more and more complicated and more sophisticated, and so the free will is in responding at the highest level you can with the intention, and then the program writes itself based on your response. It just seems to be that whole idea fascinates me. So I love to talk to this friend of mine about if there is free will, and I think there certainly is a measure of it, how does it interplay with the overall design, you know?
And many would argue that is what is going on actually on planet Earth, that we're sort of in this sort of rehab school where our very responses are being tested to all of the different stimuli that are thrown at us. And in that we take, as you say, exactly branches off into other paths, all of them determined by our own free will choosing as we make those movements and as we react to things that happen to us.
Yeah, it sounds like the string theory. The way when I heard you repeat it back, it never occurred to me before, but yeah.
That's true. And according to, well, I think it's, Catherine should be here, but I think according to string theory or some part of quantum mechanics, right, there's this theory that every single choice that you generate actually generates a new you in a different universe. So there are these multiple universes occurring with multiple versions of you in each of those universes going off and doing something slightly different in each. So,
wow. Well,
kind of a wild idea.
It is kind of a wild idea. Actually, I heard somebody talking about that. Oh, it might have been about a year and a half ago. And they said, well, in that scenario, you'll never die. Because every time,
right, it would be infinite.
Right. Every time you branch off to death, you branch off to life again.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
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 I think these are the kind of things you think about when you have too much time on your hands, but I'm not sure.
I was wondering how we can circle back to intention from there.
Yeah, I think it's all around intention. I think that if you're in a situation where you're being pushed to actually do something mentally, to get out of danger, to get out of the way, I think we have a bunch of highly motivated people that could end up, if they undertook this type of program and this type of going to relaxation and this type of going into deep gratitude, if 1,000 selected individuals were to get into this, I think, my own opinion, would be that it would shift consciousness.
I think you're absolutely right. And from everything I've read, and I've read so much and heard so much, all in bits and pieces, I think that's sort of exactly right. Have you heard of the physicist David Bohm? B-O-H?
Yes, I know.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I've tried to read his stuff.
Well, you know, if you go to YouTube, he actually talks about his stuff, and he's, you know, it's sort of easy to understand when he's talking about it, I think.
Right.
I'm sure when it's written down, it's all highly dense. But, and, you know, I'm somebody who loves reading physics. You know, I used to read pop physics for a long time because I had an undergraduate.
You'd love him. You'd love it.
Yeah, I think so. But I listened to him and I thought he was talking about pretty much the same kind of thing, wasn't he? About how quantum mechanics was leading him to that understanding that intentionality can affect the field and can change outcomes of reality.
Yeah, I think if you take everything away, especially physicality, I'm sure Catherine would love to get into this since she's a particle physicist. If you take all those things away, you're left with awareness. And your awareness is consciousness. And together, our group awareness is human consciousness. And I like to start with that as the ground of all being. I like to think of human consciousness, and maybe all of consciousness, as the fabric from which we create or something is created for us to experience. And so, yeah, I think quantum physics takes away the physicality and opens the door for consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also something about power in numbers, right? The more that a group gets together and the more people get together and the more of a group there is working in the same space and focusing intention in a certain direction, the more power they generate by that kind of consensus action.
Yeah, there were some studies done 10, 15 years ago by the university. I can never remember the name. Maharishi.
Oh, the Maharishi.
Mahesh Yogi, I think it is.
Yes, Maharishi Yogi.
They were doing TM meditation, and one of the experiments they did was they would get a certain percentage of a community to get together and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't a very small, or it wasn't a very big percentage. But one of the experiments they did was in Washington, D.C. And they issued their hypothesis statement, I guess, before the study was done. Mm-hmm. And they gave it to the chief of police of Washington, D.C. And they said, we're going to be meditating for the next 2 days, and we expect to see drastic rates in crime rates, murder rates,
Mm-hmm.
And the chief of police is quoted as saying, the only way you'll get these kind of numbers is if a massive snowstorm blankets the city and nobody can move. Well, they meditated for 3 days and met all the numbers.
Yes, I remember reading about this. They were able to actually, if you look at them, there appears to be a correlation between the numbers going down to the time period of this meditation, right?
Yeah. So so I think there's some evidence that that it works when you combine together and get a group focused on something.
Yes.
I think it can really benefit.
And I can tell you that that going in Saturday, which I used to do, I haven't been doing this for quite a while. I used to go on Saturday afternoons to this local Buddhist center and meditate with others in a group. And they were doing this kind of I think like the Vipassana meditation where you visualize a ball of light, and this ball of light enters you and goes down deep into you. And you're just focusing on the ball of light. You're really doing nothing else. And that's the meditation. You're not focusing on breathing or anything. You're just kind of visualizing and imagining this ball of light inside you and holding your attention there. And then you enter that space of meditation. It's sort of another doorway, a way to do that. But I did notice when working in a group setting like that, it was almost easier to get into that space faster, to get because everybody was sort of sitting quietly and meditating, and there was some kind of field of energy, it seems to me, some kind of power generated from just being together in a group, and each one of us taking our consciousness inward in that fashion. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there, good and bad. I think it could be corrupted. I know that if you're hypnotizing people, it's easier to hypnotize someone if there are several other people hypnotized already there.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure that people sleeping around you might induce sleep for you easier than just by yourself. I don't know about that. But yeah, it's very interesting. And that's why I think groups getting together could also serve like a destructive force, like trance music, hypnotizing, massive people to be open to a certain indoctrination that
Okay. Yes, you're talking
Normally
about
there was,
mass hypnosis in a sense, right? Through the means of some kind of music or.
yeah. I really want to trail that along with all these different um, TI
Mhm.
solutions. You know,
Right. Yeah.
hand,
It
they're
would be
powerful. They're powerful. That's what
yes,
I'm
it
saying.
would be interesting to actually study hypnosis as opposed to meditation because from what I understand, I thought they were both vastly different things. And in fact, people who meditate are less susceptible to hypnosis. I seem to have read that somewhere. Does that ring a bell with you?
No, it doesn't ring a bell to me. Uh,
Okay.
I, hmm.
Because hypnosis suggests that, you're kind of giving up your will and you're kind of giving up your sense of self and sense of separateness, right? You're kind of
Yeah,
surrendering.
hypnosis really is, it's the same as conscious awareness. I think it's just more like the state you go into when you're watching TV, and that flicker,
Right. Right.
fuzzes you into that.
Hmm.
Focused meditation is exactly the opposite.
Correct. That's what
You
I was trying to say. Yeah, it's so different. Yes.
you sharpen your perception.
Right. Right.
Let me tell you about I was studying with a Buddhist teacher, and one day he brought in a box of raisins. Now, and
Interesting.
he gave us each one raisin, and we spent the next half hour eating those raisins.
Oh, wow.
The way it went, and this is an amazing thing to try. Um, First of all, you take the raisin and you look at the raisin,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, you really look at the raisin.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the ridges and the valleys and the
Mm-hmm.
shapes, and you look at it, and then you maybe squeeze a little bit so you can get the feel of what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you finish that, then uh, you might even put it in your mouth, and
Mm-hmm.
then you know what I'm getting at. You just go
Yes. Yes.
one little step, and you're concentrating. You're totally focused on that raisin. It's the opposite of watching TV. In
Yes.
TV, they
It
put you
sounds
in.
very much to me
Go
like a
ahead.
creative writing exercise, where you have students like pick up an orange and deeply experience the orange and then write about the orange.
I think it's mindfulness. I
Yes.
think it's the opposite of TV. It's the opposite of fuzzing out and
Yes.
allowing.
Yes, it's the opposite of zombification, where you're just staring at the TV and all these other messages, can get into your brain without you even noticing it
That's
and
right.
kind of zonk you out into some kind of strange zone. Um, whereas in this
Well,
case,
go
you're
ahead.
very
I'm sorry.
in this case you're very focused and you're using your concentration. Mm.
Well, and you were focused on your plants when you were in the garden, and you were probably getting
Mhm.
more color sense out of them.
Yes,
Um,
I was. I was looking at everything. I was thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't sketched in a long while. I need to sit out here in the garden and do some sketching. So, yes, I was looking at everything because things are still blooming, things are still budding,
that's right.
yes, and the temperature's going down. Mhm.
And they're spending thousands of dollars today, overflying you with helicopters, paying all the perps in your neighborhood,
Yeah,
flying light planes, people driving up and down the street to
correct.
map you enjoying
Yeah,
your garden.
exactly.
That's so wonderful.
So, it's like it's the way I get back at them, I guess, by just going ahead and doing what I want to do, but sort of trying in a way to withdraw from the madness by going inward, through the conscious breathing. So, the thing that I had wanted to mention before, that I think I talked about with Mindy was, um, along the lines of connecting with with not just intention, but or connecting with the unified field, but connecting with nature, and in a sense connecting with nature and sort of aligning oneself with nature, and with the earth, and sort of, and this has to go back to, this goes back to yoga and the chakras, and sort of entering your heart chakra space, and sort of moving your serenity vibrations out from your heart chakra space in connection with nature and in connection with the earth, and kind of sending good vibes out into the atmosphere as well. So that's something I do when I like doing that, because it's a way of sort of consciously connecting with nature, So when I remember when I'm outside, that's something I try to do. But that might be a way too that people might, it's not exactly something out of a book. It's just something I do. So I'm just sort of throwing it out there in case people find that useful as well. Because everybody loves nature, right? Everyone goes out for a walk and enjoys the quietness and the trees and the birds and so forth. So why not take it one step further and connect at a deeper level by sort of entering your own heart chakra space and sort of sending love to the trees, in other words, So
Right.
it's kind of connected to, how you hear the story about how love, well, I'm sure I've heard it from you, Paul. I've heard it from various people that love is the most powerful force, It's the opposite of what the hate that's coming our way, the repression that's coming our way. But it's very hard for people who are being assaulted to sort of suddenly send love to the people who are doing this to them, And it's certainly hard for me too. I can't say I'm there. I'm in that spiritual space where I can send love to my neighbors who are tracking and, hitting me with potable directed energy weapons, and permitting people to park in their driveways and hit me, and so on and so forth. I can't say that I feel great love or that I can send out love to them at this point in time, but I can focus on my own heart chakra space, and I can connect with things that I do love, which is the garden or nature or my writing. That's what I would say to people, connect with things that you do love, with spaces that you do love, and send that love out into the world so that you exist in a state of love. But it doesn't necessarily, you're not being asked to do the really hard thing, which is, love your enemy as yet, which I know is in the Bible, and, perhaps the holy spiritual people can really get that, But
Well,
I'm not.
it's the ultimate walking out of duality.
Yeah.
The only way we're in a lesson of duality, or the Christians, I think, called more of a test, but it's definitely deals with duality. And it seems to me that duality is like Chinese handcuffs. Those little, what Chinese handcuffs are?
Oh no, actually, do describe them.
Well, it's a little woven piece of just straw that they make in China.
Okay.
And you put a finger in one side and a finger in the other side. It's just a little tube. And
Okay.
when you pull apart, the fibers tighten and they hold you in the handcuffs.
Oh,
The
wow.
only way to get out of the handcuffs is push your fingers together, and the handcuffs will drop off.
Oh my, very
So,
interesting.
yeah, unless you've seen them,
Uh-huh.
Google them. I'm sure that they haven't taken Chinese handcuffs off of Google yet.
Okay.
But anyway, the more you pull on one side, the more it polarizes the other side. The more, and the extremes of both sides are ultimate corruption. So the lesson in duality isn't to pull away, because what you resist persists. The lesson in duality is to go above it and see that the entire playing field is orchestrated. And I know that's really a leap, especially for people who are being hit by these monsters.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's. I think to some extent, intellectually, you can see that the whole playing field is indeed being orchestrated and choreographed. All of this is, a sort of set up provocation that one is surrounded with. It's so up close, it's in your face. It's very hard to pull away and be completely, Buddhist about it, completely
Right.
Zen about it.
But that's the whole incentive to get like that. I mean, uh, it's an incentive for all of us because honestly, whether you're in this program or you're not, you're targeted in the same way if you're human.
Right. I mean, we're all being targeted actually right now at this period in time, right? We're all being targeted.
Exactly. So this is one way, this is one technique, and many of them on this portal, of a way of climbing out of it. Because the duality, I think, is self-defeating. I remember a couple of years ago watching a video. It's on YouTube called "The History of the Devil," and it goes back to the different conceptualizations of this satanic creature. And it seems to me that when it started off, it wasn't as horrible. It wasn't as all-encompassing evil as it is today. I mean, today we have up in our face pedophilia. I mean, we have the depth of evil.
Yes. Everything to do with children. I mean, all the child molestation, the child sacrifice that you hear, the satanic ritual abuse, the trafficking, of women, children, the organ harvesting, all of this. I mean, it's
horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And of course, Satan is the enemy of Christ. And so you have your dichotomy. And of course, Christianity, as much of it is the good, positive answer, taken to its extreme becomes Calvinism and Puritanism and, kind of an unworking kind of thing.
Fundamentalism. Yes, almost anything taken to an extreme becomes, repressive.
Right. So pulling away, I don't want anybody to lose their religion over anything I say, because I sure don't know. But it just seems to me that pulling in the Chinese handcuffs isn't going to get us out of them.
Oh, right. Yes.
It's only gratitude and understanding, and if we could ever achieve love, that would be the ultimate. I have interviewed a woman who she's going to be on here in a couple of weeks, who has been able to stop her program because she just sends them love, and she's a very interesting woman. I can't wait to get her on here.
Oh, sounds wonderful. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've met people also. I mean, I think James Shin, he's the guy who painted his car and drove from Venice, California, all the way to New York, and prayed at Jewish temples and Masonic lodges along the way, because basically this ritual, and what he was doing was he was praying for the people in these Masonic centers to break out of their sort of conceptualizing of the world as theirs and imposition of their ideologies, repressive ideologies on the rest of us, and basically of being the bad guys that they are. So because he chose Jewish temples and Jewish synagogues, he kind of came under the radar of DHS. And in Stamford, Connecticut, he was arrested. And of course, his car is, it's a flashy car. It's like a very small, I don't know what kind of make it is. It's just a small car. But it's dark blue and it's painted. I did an article on him, and I posted pictures of his car because I thought it's fantastic that he did this, with targeted individual painted on it and silent weapons for quiet wars and various quotes from that PDF, painted on it, and quotes from JFK's last speech about secret societies and things about 9/11, the Great Deception, and and so on. And you know, he obviously a very attention-getting kind of vehicle. Well, he was arrested. He was thrown in jail. He was in jail for 7 months, and I spoke to him, and he sent me all of this information, which, you know, I published again about his entire experience. One of a couple of the things that he said to me really astonished me, though. One was he said that during that time in jail, he took time to really meditate and go inward, and in a sense, it kind of calmed him down and made kind of leveled him out, or it really sort of made him much more of a serene person rather than an angry person about the targeting. And the other thing he said was, oh yes, now he says when he meets people, whether they're, you know, people who are stalking him or just normal people out, he gives them the same attitude. You know, in other words, he's friendly with everybody. He doesn't differentiate, and he doesn't respond to provocation. He is a very spiritual and very calm person. You know, he meditates and things. So, but he's able, in a sense, to treat all people in the same way now, and I think that's fantastic to come to
Oh, I
that
think
point, to be.
that would be a major breakthrough to be able to do that.
Yes, yes, I think so too. Yes.
So they'd finally realize that you really can't map human consciousness. Human consciousness, well, it's separate from the mind, I think. And
I think you're right, and yes, yes, and from that's everything that I read too, from all of these traditions. You know, that consciousness is separate from the mind. That the mind,
it's
the
just
mind, the mind is the monkey mind, right? We're constantly having thoughts bouncing up and down our brains, whereas once you tap into that field of consciousness, you're sort of in a more serene state.
exactly. The monkey mind is really an interesting concept because
Yeah.
that's the matrix, is the monkey mind. It's
Right.
it's the chatter that keeps going on. It's the world out there that really may or may not be out there. It keeps encroaching upon your inner self. And yeah, the monkey mind is really an interesting concept. And it might be that we have enough special selected people getting involved in this that you know, it can really make a difference in the whole energy field here, I think.
Yes, I hope so. Yes, I think so. And it's, you know, you don't even have to be targeted, like in the ways that some of us are with weapons, with directed energy weapons, to make a difference in the energy field, right? I mean, all you need to do is sort of commit to entering that space more often, that space of serenity and inwardness and inner tranquility.
Right. And get out of the created puppet show world that flashes by on your TV screen, and things that you make up about people, and just get out of that totally, and relax, enjoy yourself. Boy, what a strange way out, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's possible, and I think that's what we've been talking about. It's possible, even if it's for just a few minutes in the day or a few hours in the day. It's possible to break out of that space of always feeling that you're being provoked, you're being harassed, you're being kind of harried and focused on, which you are. You know, that you're being surveilled and stalked and all that. It's possible to break out of that awareness. So,
Wow.
so that's hopeful.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to do with this surfing the portal thing.
Yes, I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you, Paul.
I was not able to get into the chat today.
I couldn't either. Did you do this through Pinecone Utopia or through some other?
Oh, yeah, that's I did it through Paul Marco. That's why I'm in the wrong.
Okay. Because I opened it and I couldn't find it. I guess that's why.
Okay, this is. Let me see if I can find it. Nope, it's not even there either. So.
Oh, I see.
So.
That's odd. But never mind. At least we've had this conversation, I guess.
Oh no! Here it is. Here it is.
Oh, you
Live now.
found it.
Seven people are watching, and oh, there's some old friends here. Great Topic is here.
Oh, excellent.
Great Topic, Cacti Juice. Well, that's the two people.
Wonderful.
Good to see. Great Topic always shows up.
That's great.
Oh, it looks like Mindy was on.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
that's cool. Yeah,
wonderful.
so I'm going to. Should we kind of finish it off?
Yes, absolutely. I think we've had like an hour's conversation, right?
We had more than an hour's conversation, and it's probably one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever been involved in. It was really fun.
It was really fun. It was very interesting. We traveled a lot of places, and you've incited me to go look into a whole lot of subjects at this point in time. And I would like to have you on my show at some point, Paul, and to talk further about consciousness from your consciousness studies book and everything.
Good. I'll be happy to do it anytime.
Wonderful.
And I'd like to encourage the rest of you selected people and people who aren't selected. This mindfulness meditation technique is so powerful. It works individually, it works together. And I think we need to start working together to climb out of this mess and leave this black and white, good guy, bad guy stuff behind us and move on to some other more interesting lessons, because quite frankly, I've had it with this one.
Yeah,
I think I do.
We're a little bored now.
That's right. I'm a little bored with this one. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Good night, Romola.
Thank you very much for having me on, Paul. Good night, everyone. See you another time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.